and welcome back to the Cognition School Podcast. My name is Satoshi Takano. I'm here at ReactForge in Vaughan. If you're ever in the Toronto area, feel free to drop by and come see our 12,000 square foot facility. But today, I have one of our very, very good friends and a very incredible guest, Matt Chiarantano from the Brampton Steelheads. And before I ask you questions, I'm just going to do a little bit of I did a little bit of surveillance on your background here.
Sounds good.
But as far as your playing career, obviously you've had some success at the college level, and you had a little bit of a stint in the East Coast Hockey League as well, and then from there, obviously you kind of gotten into the coaching side of things, and you're on the bench with our good friend Jeff Schmogs,
Yeah.
and so you had some great experience there. And then from there, you moved into the Mississauga / Brampton Steelheads. I guess you just finished your fourth season now. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And what I particularly love about your role is working with the D. And we have a lot of defensemen that we work with here, and I'd love to kind of get some insights into that. So welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. You're doing great stuff. So hopefully give back to the community and keep it going.
Yeah, appreciate it. So one of the things that we really want to kind of focus on is helping, especially with the kids that are going into the draft, because obviously the kids that just got drafted a couple of weeks ago, they're going in through orientation and such. I guess my first question is, what's the sentiment like with some of the newly drafted kids that are coming into the Steelheads organization?
Well, it's exciting times. I mean, for them, it's a dream come true for most of these kids. Going through it, I mean, it's a long process. I know the pressures of this is the first time that everybody's kind of watching them. So going through the process of it, it's obviously an exciting but nervous time. I find that once they get their feet wet in terms of just kind of like getting into development camp or orientations in the first little bit of the summer and spring, they get kind of acclimated on what's to expect, and they meet the coaching staff and everyone else, and once that kind of happens, it kind of lessens the pressure of it, and then they can just go back to performing what they need to do in order to make the team, obviously in August and September. So for them, a lot of pressure built up to the draft leading up to it, and then there's a little bit of pressure subsides, and then for the kids that might not have gotten drafted or maybe gotten selected differently where they thought they would have been, it's somewhat of an eye-opener for them, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's the be-all end-all. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I find with parents and specifically with players that I work with, is just like, it doesn't define you. And I think that's so important to understand that. And it's like it's just another step in the experience for them in their careers, but it doesn't mean that it's a full stop. It's what do you need to do now to get to the next level to propel you into a role that you want to play. Obviously, a team that you want to play for.
I find that that's a really important point, because I've definitely heard from players and parents say, "How come I didn't get drafted in this round?" Or "I should have gone higher," or whatever. And I always tell them, it's really no. This is just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't define you, like you said. I think that's really really key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any tips for the new guys that are coming in terms of things to work on or even have a mindset on?
Yeah, I mean, you've gotten selected for a reason. Obviously, the scouts and the GMs have done their jobs and due diligence in selecting you as a potential prospect for the organization. So there is, things, tangible and intangible assets that you can bring to the organization. So you want to try to get those under your belt and understand what it is that makes you as a player and as a person. And then from there, building on those things. And I think that's super important, is understanding your identity moving forward. It happens every year. Every year it's always, I had so many points and I'm going to be a goal scorer, a go-to guy, and you might go into a role where maybe you're more of a shutdown player or a middle six forward or whatever it is, and you don't get that opportunity the first few years, and it's like you're building these building blocks to yourself and understanding of who you are as a player, because there's only so many goal scorers. If you look at the NHL, like as a prime example, like there's only so many guys that can put the puck in the net. So what else can you provide to the organization for you to be a tangible long-term asset to them? So for me, it's just like getting to know these kids and players and giving them an idea of who they are and what I think that they're going to be really successful at, and getting them to understand that is one thing, and then embodying it is another. For me, it's just getting their feet wet, getting a feel of who I am and the rest of the staff, obviously, but specifically for the defenseman coming in, it's just getting the right mindset in place of like, this is what we see you as, or maybe not what we see you as, but this is what you can be successful at. I would highly recommend you do these things and you will see your results happen. And we never want to pigeonhole players, but I think it's them that they're going to give us the identity that they want to be. But I think it's also looking externally and saying, hey, listen, like, you're a really good skater. You can really get on the forecheck, for example. I can really see you being a solid two-way, 200-foot player. And that might not be a thing that they did in the minor hockey. They might have been the best player and said, you know what, I'm going to score all these goals. And now you have guys that are goal scorers, on different clubs. And all of a sudden now it's like you have to find a different niche. So it's getting them to understand that.
Well, first of all, it stuff really emphasizes the team sport aspect, right? And that from a coaching staff perspective, you guys are like the ultimate chess players, right? Where you're kind of like looking at each player and seeing how that fits into the organization. And I love what you said about, kind of focusing on their strengths, what they're really great at, and then that incremental, new piece to their game that they can add. So I love that.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. And I guess my second question would essentially be U18, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kids that either got drafted and are now kind of being sent back to play U18, or potentially even kids that didn't get drafted and they want to play, U18. What's kind of like your suggestion in terms of mindset for kids that are kind of maybe going into that U18?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's often overlooked. I think, it's funny because, we had a kid on our team, a player now. He's not a kid anymore. He's more of a man going in, but a guy by the name of Finn Harding. I think Finn was a prime example of a kid that was a later round pick or a mid-round pick, played U18, really got to know himself as a player and really honed in on some of the skills that he needed to get to the next step. He played a full season in U18. The following year stepped into our lineup and then continued to grow and continued to develop and get better. And then over the course of a few years, he went to an NHL camp, and then the following year he gets drafted to Pittsburgh and then ends up signing. So there is a pathway. And I think that's such an important thing to understand for parents and players. It's that you can't just discount like a particular league. It might be the best for you at that time. And that's okay. But if you have this preconceived notion of like, I have to play OHL and I have to play junior and I can't do this or I can't do that, you're really closing a lot of doors and opportunities, because there's some great coaches and some great organizations that are going to help you develop and get to where you want to go. And I think that's such a crucial element to understand. And I think U18 is a great development league. I think it's an opportunity where some of those players might have been looked at as in a different role as what they would be in their first year U18. They might have been a third line, fourth, fifth defenseman or whatever it is. And now they're getting the opportunity to be number one or a top six or whatever it is. And now you can really excel. And there's another kid, Lombardi, came out of the Titans when I first started coaching, and he was out there, and again, he just really took off. And there's tons of players that I've seen prior to me during my time playing and now coaching that have really used U18 as a really, really good stepping stone for their careers. And again, it goes back to the whole thing. It's not where you start, it's where you develop and like where you want to grow. Because if you're going to try to go to a junior A or junior B spot and you're just kind of sitting there and you're kind of taking a backseat to a lot of these players, it might not be the best development for you. So it's really understanding your pathway and what you really truly want out of the game and out of your career, essentially.
Yeah, and like you said, everybody's different, and they grow at different rates. So I think that's really important, because I think the challenge with a lot of parents and players is, do I play U18 or go maybe junior B? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think U18 is a great opportunity for you, like I said. And I think there's, especially now with the draft, and now you have different tournaments that are really showcasing or trying to showcase these players in a bigger landscape. I think it's awesome. I never had those opportunities when I played U18 as well. for half a season or so. So I kind of know that it's changed over the course of time. And, having the draft is a big benefit to some of these players. And it gives them an opportunity to get another look and continue to grow. Like you said, I think it's the biggest thing is just development. And wherever you go, you have to have the mindset of, I need to continue development. I don't know everything. I have to continue to push and get better and want to get better and want to be open-minded, because as soon as you're closed-minded, it's really, really detrimental to a player.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, like you coached U18 as well, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so you kind of got to see some even some really great players even on that team. I remember.
So yeah, and I came back from playing, injuries, troubles and stuff, and I just kind of said enough was enough. So I went back to school, and at the time, I had to finish my degree. I was in graduate school when I signed in the East Coast, so I had a little bit of school left to finish. So I was actually going back to U18, helping out a good friend of mine, Frankie DeAngelis, and he kind of brought me on and said, "You can help these kids, just fresh out of the game." I said, "Yeah, we'll see. I'm just kind of doing school." And I think that was, for me as a coach especially, was the biggest help now looking back, because what it made me do is not lean to the star players. I had to really cater to some of these players that might not be the stars otherwise. And I had to learn different methods and ways to coach them and get them to where they need to be. So it was a great experience for me. I think without it, I wouldn't be the coach that I am today, and I'm still learning. But I think not only as a player, like trying to learn and develop, as a coach, it's a great way to get, thinking outside the box. I think that was such a big thing for me. And I encourage everyone to take a look at that. I think it's so important. So you're going to get some quality coaches there, and I think it's a great avenue to use.
And I know that you had some really great players over the years too, right?
Hmm.
So the first guy that comes to my mind is Zane,
Yeah,
and obviously he's had tremendous success over
yeah,
his junior career, and he played his first game in Calgary, and
yeah, yeah. It was
um,
great to see. Great to see. And I remember when we were in North York, he was coming up, and obviously we had the other two there, and Issa and Aiden, and we brought him up as like a call up and in North York, and seeing him grow and develop and be with his brothers, it was awesome to see. And again, it takes time, and you can see like other players that it doesn't always have to happen right away. Like, there's a prime example of how he just kept climbing up the ladders, but there's other players that were still on that team that I can think of that needed those extra years, and they ended up going to Division 1 programs or other OHL teams down the road. So it goes back to the whole development piece.
and obviously you've been working with a lot with defensemen, I think, and you were a defenseman too, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was.
So obviously, I mean, I'm a small guy too, and
Yeah.
and I played D growing up. How did you kind of handle some of those pressures of the size difference when you were
Yeah,
playing?
you know what? It's funny because I was always thought that I had to find a different element to survive, and I think I was a little bit ahead of now the curve of having a little smaller defenseman. Now in the NHL, you're seeing guys all over the place, and I guess when I was playing, it was very, very hard. I remember the first guy that I can think of that was around my age was Torrey Krug coming up through college, and he signed in Boston at the time. And that was the first kind of player that I was like, wow, okay, he's kind of small, but he's surviving. And for me, it was just like, honestly, it was a lot of cerebral stuff, like understanding the game to a point where I can survive. And, now we use terms like scanning, and obviously we use shoulder checking and stuff, but scanning was a thing that I had to do, but it wasn't called scanning, it was called survival. And it
Survival.
was like, yeah, and being able to have your head on a swivel, understanding what's coming, and being aware and having that spatial awareness of, okay, this is the play I have to make. This guy's coming. Like, there's a lot of different things that you have to kind of compartmentalize when you're playing the game, especially when we were playing. It was a lot different then. I'm not aging myself or anything like that, but the game has shifted so much in the last decade, and you can even see it, just the speed that we're watching the NHL playoffs. Like, it's really evolved, and it just, the skill sets and everything are just so much more advanced. But going back to when I was playing D, it was a lot of these things, and I had to find ways to survive. And another thing for me is stick details. I'm not the biggest guy, so I had to have a really, really good stick, because I knew that going into a corner, I wasn't going to outmuscle most of the guys. So knowing your angles, knowing your routes, understanding where I want to put a player. And a lot of those things I think of now, and I, as a coach, and I really try to dive deeper in those things, because if I have a guy that's now 6'3", 6'4" with a good stick, now we're really laughing. Like, now he's like next level. So sometimes it's going back on the experiences that I had and just kind of understanding on what worked, what didn't, and having the ability to now convey that to my players is kind of the ultimate thing. So you're using your own experiences to your players, and I think it's really been nice to see, and thinking back in time.
I like that you call it survival skills, right? And that you're overemphasizing certain skills because that's
Hmm.
what you had to do. But now you have the luxury of working with guys that are already have the size. So that's a check. And then you're
Yeah,
just kind of working on those fine details.
exactly.
When you work with guys like, 6'4" Stevie Lescovar, that's got to be a blessing for you because, you can kind of put yourself in his shoes, but now
Yeah,
he's got the reach, right? Like,
yeah.
what type of things would you work with guys like Stevie on, like, throughout the season?
So for me, obviously skating is important. So again, like another thing that, my dad specifically and other trainers that I had over the years really, again, at that time coming up, was you have to be able to skate. And that was the thing. It was just like, if you can skate, you can get your way out of trouble, and you can have good gaps to the neutral zone. You can break out pucks. Like, there's a lot of things there. So for me, skating is a foundational piece. I think nowadays you're seeing it, like I said, in the NHL, like, these guys can actually move and fly. And I think if you don't have that skating portion, there's always ways to improve it, but you have to have the foundational pieces. You have to have good edge work. You have to have, good stride, good hard strides. You have to be, knees bent, things that you need to have in order to be a successful player. And then those building blocks essentially, over time continue to get better and develop, and then you see quality players. So for me, working with Stevie, he always had, coming in to what was Mississauga at the time, seeing him, he's had a lot of potential, because you can see that he could skate. He had an absolute bomb of a shot, good reach, and more importantly, he was a great kid. And I think having all those pieces made him to what he was today. And it was just continuing, like I said prior, it was just building on those pieces and continuing for them to see what they could be like. And I think that was, once it clicked in, it was like, okay. And then you add a physicality piece to it, and then, the rest is history, really. Like, NHL teams started to catch on, and it was not a secret anymore. So, and that was a group effort from all of us in the Steelheads, like, and especially, and more specifically, his own coaches that he's had too. I think that cannot get overlooked. He puts the work in. He's worked with you and countless other people. He's continuing to try to develop and get better, and it's a great story, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, a couple of things I would say. So he's the same age as my son. So
Mhm.
we kind of grew up together with the family. The one thing that I remember, Stevie, and we always talk about this all the time. So we were out in um, uh, Zelensky, Austria, right, at a spring tournament together. And the one thing that Stevie did extremely well, and this is just his nature, that he was just a professional off the ice. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, this was going back to 20, I think 16 or 2017. So now it's almost 8 or 9 years ago. And the way that he talked to me, it almost felt like I was talking to an adult.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he had some issues with his skates, and he's like, hey, Mr. Takano, can you look at my skate, and can you replace my blade, because his dad
Yeah.
wasn't there. So
Hmm.
I was kind of like his equipment manager, and I'm like shocked. I'm like, Mr. Takano, like, what is that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but that kind of extends, like, even to this day. He doesn't call me Mr. Takano anymore, but it's at that level of professionalism
Yeah.
off the ice, and how that translated to the ice at that point. I was like, this kid's gonna go somewhere.
Yeah, no question. I think it was a great fit for both of us, and I think something that, like you said, it can't get overlooked is the culture piece of who you are as a person. I think one of the things I've talked about this with countless people is, like, we often forget that we are all human, and when
Hmm.
they put the gear on, they're a hockey player, but they're a human being. So it's having that element of like quality personality, quality, morals and ethics, and things that they really want to, their values are something that can't get overlooked. And players and people that have those tendencies and qualities are usually the ones that continue to grow as players, and they have the success stories that they do. So I think that is something that cannot get overlooked. And it's just a great, I have so many stories just like that where I was walking away shaking your head laughing because of the quality in which that he walks around with. So but again, it can't get overlooked. I think that's such a crucial piece of being a good person, oftentimes ends up being translating to being a good hockey player.
Yeah, and the other thing for me anyway, because I think you were in Vegas as well last year when he got drafted. He was a +2, right?
Yes, that's very rare, very rare.
Very rare. And I was literally boarding the plane on that second day of the draft, and I was kind of, keeping an eye on things and kind of looking at all the 06s, right, getting drafted. And then I'm like, what? Stevie Lescovar, right? Like,
Yeah.
and to me, like, obviously, like, I was happy, but I was like shocked at the same time, going, wow, like this can still happen. So I think
Yeah.
for a lot of the guys that may not get drafted, even for this year, right, going to the NHL, that
Yep.
it can happen, whether it be, at any age.
100%. Yeah, it's a great story. Like I remember he was playing junior C at one point.
That's right.
And he was telling me that, and I think it was a great fit both ways. I think when he came over from Peterborough to us, a lot of things lined up well. I think there was an opportunity there where guys kind of fell down the depth chart and he could kind of step in. But I think another thing was just kind of identifying who he was as a player. And I think there's another prime example of sometimes you have to take the opportunity that's given and really take it and run with it. And I think he did a phenomenal job. And I continue to use that story as it's a success story, but I use that often as a template to other players that sometimes don't get, they're behind the eight ball in their mind, and it's like, wait your time. It'll happen. Don't worry. Wait for the opportunity to come and just be ready in the weeds when it's given, whether you get in the lineup, for example, and you've been a scratch, or, a player that maybe gets a call up opportunity, whatever the case is in your own situation. I think that's so important, is just being ready and having that ability to step in there and then take that opportunity and run with it. I think that's what he did, and other guys have done the same thing. And I think it's a great story.
Yeah, I mean that's like the definition of hard work meets opportunity, right? Like you creating
Yes.
your own luck. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really, really great message. So let's talk a little bit about, your kind of philosophy with defensemen. You've had 3 players this year that signed with their NHL
Yeah.
teams, and so obviously you guys are doing something right. And I'd love to kind of pick your brain in terms of, kind of your approach and your philosophy with respect to being a D coach.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I don't really say this quite often, but and not a lot of people know, but I was actually a teacher before I was a coach. So going back to graduate school, I ended up getting my master's degree in education. So when I finished my 4 years at Niagara University, I ended up going into teaching. So I was teaching prior to that, and then was, I kind of organically over time grew into more of a coaching role. I always loved the game of hockey and everything, and it kind of was a natural fit. So a lot of the development pieces that I've worked with kids and players, whether it's in the OHL, whether it's my own stuff on the side and working with players, is a lot of it is just teaching methods. And it's funny because I just, for example, like, I don't really ever tell them that I'm doing this, but probing is a teaching method that people use to see if you know the answers to questions that you might or might not know. And I probe players all the time. One thing that I do quite often is like I lead them to the answer, but I don't give them the answer. And then all of a sudden it creates this sort of recognition and recall, and then their memory obviously grows, and then they retain more information and it just continues. So that's something that I do quite often. They don't know what it's called. It's just a philosophy thing, but for me, it's just using those skills of being a teacher first and coach second. And then that's kind of really the the culminating thing for me is just getting them to understand certain concepts and ways of learning. And I think understanding your players is one thing, but also having the ability to teach what you need them to know for them to be successful. And I think there's some awesome, awesome hockey minds out there that might not be able to convey what they know. And we've seen that from the greatest players of all time trying to be coaches, and they have a hard time because they can't convey what they know in their brains. And I think there's a big thing to be said where if you know how to convey your messages and your development pieces into a way that's going to be catered to your players, I think that goes a long way. And I think that's where the development portion for us, and specifically the Steelheads, has been, is that we as a group collectively all have the same ideas and methods, and then we use our different teaching styles to get those messages across so that they can be the success stories. So I think that's something that I've brought with myself as a coach, is just relaying those teaching methods into a more practical way. And I use the rink as my classroom now, essentially.
That's a lot of fun. I know exactly what you mean, because some of the stuff that we teach here, we may not just drill them to death, right? But we're trying to teach them concepts, and I teach at Humber College as well, and it's the same
Okay.
thing. That
It really is. It really is. And you know exactly what I mean by that. Like, and just like sequential learning, for example. Like, I'm never going to say, hey, guys, we're going to do sequential learning. They'd be like, Matt, what are you talking about? But really, all we're really doing is just using cognitive processing, where certain things are foundational skills, and then you work your way up. So you start with skating, and then you know, skating without a puck, skating with a puck. Now you're skating and using agility. Now you're skating and picking up pucks off of a rim, for example. It's all basic learning, and then you're just kind of adding those to pieces and elements together, and then that's how they're learning. And I think understanding the process of how people learn, you fast track a lot of the development portion. And another thing for me is just like scaffolding. Scaffolding is a term that teachers and educators use to essentially provide support to players, and then you allow them to learn on their own, and then all of a sudden you take yourself out of it, and now they're doing it themselves. So I do that all the time with them. It's like I kind of walk them through it, and then eventually I kind of take the reins off, and then they're just running it on their own. And to the point where now, like, we have development sessions and they're running themselves, and it's just like I'm standing there correcting, but they're running the whole thing. Like, I can say, do this drill, do that, do this, and right away they know exactly what's going on, to the point where if they mess it up, I don't even have to tell them. They'll just go redo it themselves. And they already know the cues and tendencies to look for. So they know, like, hands off the body, or, you know, knees bent or tight turn. They know if they messed up and why they messed up. I think the why is super important too, because it's a recall memory. They can understand it and say, okay, I messed up. This is why. And now they know what to look for as they move forward. So it's elevating the learning to a different level. That's all it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And again, you're basically using the rink as a classroom to be able to do that. And yeah, I think your approach is amazing. And obviously that takes consistency and knowing all your players and
Yep.
understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are. So I love that concept, because I think a lot of parents struggle with that, because sometimes they feel like they should always be learning something new. Right?
Yeah.
They always have to be, using a new tool, or so you're kind of stacking, but you don't have the foundation. You're just going up like this.
You're going 100%. That's exactly it.
But very skinny, right? Like
Yeah.
you're skinny. You haven't built anything down here.
Yeah.
They're just constantly doing other things, like a Michigan or whatever, right? Like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never
Very seldomly do I bring apparatuses on the ice or things. And I think every tool is useful in the right way. I'll
Yes.
never discount anything, because I think everything is great. I'm a big believer on different things and techniques, and having a wide variety of things if it's used in the correct manner. I think that is so important. And I think a lot of players, and if they're not going 100 miles an hour through things, it's like, well, I haven't really done anything. But if you look at, and I had the pleasure of watching NHL camps. I've had friends and family members of mine play at the highest level possible. So I was able to always ask them or go see them and watch. And very rarely do they have a lot of things on the ice. Like, those are useful tools, secondary useful tools. They're not primary. And it's going back to those basics. The edge work, the passing is crucial. Understanding to make quick decisions. Like, all those things do not require anything other than a puck and a stick.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Often, whether it be an OHL skate or even at the NHL level, you look at the drill and you're like, what are they doing? Like, that's just
yeah,
basic stuff. Like, any kid can do that. But there's a
yeah,
method to the madness. And I think that's what,
100%.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
people need to kind of understand that it may not always be, the fanciest things, but there's a reason why it's being done.
And I think that's exactly it. And I think for me, it's getting them to also know why and asking them the question, why are we doing this? It's a simple question. Why are we doing this? And all of a sudden they're like, I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. And then they're like, well, how many times has it happened in a game? A lot. Okay. Like a simple drill where a big thing for me is like timing and space and having the ability to make plays at a quick rate. Well, how can you do that? Where's the puck usually? On the yellow. So if you can quickly pick up a puck off the yellow and make a play with it, whether it's skate, whether it's pass, whatever it is, now you're going to have more time to make plays. But if you're going through things and you're not really understanding why a simple drill like a pickup off of a rim is important, you're going to struggle. But if they know why they're doing it, you kind of lead them to wanting to get better and wanting to do it and looking past that. Hey, this drill's kind of boring, but it's effective.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting them, again, it goes back to the whole teaching thing. It's getting them to do it and why they're doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think to me, hockey is very similar to math, right? That if you don't know how to add, you can't multiply, right?
Right.
Like, and if you don't know how to multiply, you can't do exponents, right? And if
Yeah.
you can't do exponents, you can't do, integrated calculus. Like, and I think that's where people fail in math is it's not a hard thing to understand. It's just you're missing some of the basic foundational things to get to
Yeah.
the more applied aspect of it. So yeah, no, I think 100%. I totally agree with you. I noticed, like, a couple of things, especially with both Stevie and also with Finn and even Connor Smith too, right? That, like, there's an element of speed. They move the puck quickly, but I also find that they're very deceptive as well. Like, they're not just like giving it away for the sake of speed, but they
Yeah.
add a little bit of a pause to make the other, attacker that's coming at them think that they're going to go one way, but then they actually go the other way.
Yeah.
Is that something that you kind of teach as well as far as timing and such go?
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that we talk about all the time is underhandling pucks. So we don't need to dust pucks. We want to get pucks and we want to move them as quickly as we can. So if you are making hard plays and there's two sides of the blade, well, I'll ask you, what's the strongest part, the forehand or the backhand? It's the forehand,
Forehand.
right? So we want to set ourselves up to approaching that puck and then recovering that puck on our forehand. So now it gives us the extra time that it takes for me to go from backhand to forehand. If I can take that element right out and have you get the puck on your forehand, now you just gave yourself another split second to make a decision. Well, now you're set up to make a play. So now you become a triple or dual threat option. So you can make a play to the left, you can skate the puck, you can make a play to the right, or you can make the play up the middle. So depending on the situations, now you've given yourself three options as opposed to one. So now you've allowed yourself to be more deceptive and having that ability to create more plays other than the one that you might have had on your backhand. The second element to that is understanding getting inside the dots. So as a defenseman, we never want to stay on the outside of the dots because that's where the bad ice is. And as you move up levels, players oftentimes are going to be better anglers and you're going to put you in a bad spot. So if you're up on the boards, let's say on a retrieval, you have to get in the middle of the ice because it opens up different avenues to make a play. But sometimes guys will go get that, or players will go get that puck and they'll stay on the boards and they'll stay on the outside. Well, somebody coming through the neutral zone is just going to angle you off to the boards. Your only play now is up the wall. Well, now somebody can read that and now you're not getting out of that zone. So it's understanding that you're setting yourself up in two ways. One, your first touch to that puck, how you're doing it, and two, what you do when you do get that puck. I think that's the second element. And then from there, then they use their abilities and their skill sets to make those plays, whether it be skating, passing, shooting, whatever the case is. but it's getting them to see that and then getting them to understand the why. And I think that's done through development sessions in the morning, individual sessions that we do on video, and then in game. Like, one thing that I do a lot is active recall. And again, it goes back to the whole teaching thing. I'll stand on the bench, and as plays are happening, they're all watching. So if there's 6 defensemen, there's 4 sitting there. So I have an opportunity to make 4 guys learn while someone's doing something. So how do I do that? So I'm watching, let's say they're working on a puck retrieval. So puck gets dumped in the corner. I'll say, okay, guys, and I'll narrate it as it's happening. That's got to be a quick bump. And they'll see it because they're watching it. So now they're saying, okay, now I'm learning. I'm not yelling it. I'm just talking, but they can hear me. So essentially they're watching it happen. And all of a sudden now we get broken out of the zone. It's out. And now they're like, that's how it looks like. Okay, perfect. And now you're using what's happening to make them understand and learn, and then have them critically think of what's happening, so that when they go out there, they've seen it before. They know what to do. And now it just continues to build. And then over the course of time, I'll even say, okay, let's say it doesn't happen or it doesn't work and he fumbles it or whatever reason. He'll come back, and usually I won't yell or get mad. I'll say, hey, what happened? This happened. Okay, how do we fix it? And it's having those conversations, and they're brief. They're real quick, and they'll be like, I gotta lower my hand. Okay, done. And it's really that simple. And it's like, hey, remember when we did this in development ice, or we saw this on a video last week where you did X and this happened? Yeah, that just happened there. And it's like, okay, memory recalled, and they store it to an experience that has happened to them, so that when it happens the next time, they know what to do with it, and I don't have to tell them. So that's kind of how it works.
So you're literally doing that in a game.
Yeah, in a game. So I've had a few players I actually love that. Like, I think it's awesome. And it doesn't happen all the time. I'm not doing it. I'm not narrating the whole
Right.
game, but
Right.
there's certain instances where, again, we might have worked on that on Monday or Tuesday in development session, where a surf play happened and a good stick detail or whatever it is, something so small. And I'll say, hey, doesn't that look familiar? And guys will turn around and say, we did that on Monday. And I'll say, oh, who knew? And I'll just and it's funny but again, it's that teaching element, and it's quick. It doesn't have to be something profound. It's just right to the point. Now they know, and their reactions in game is quite surprising. And I think obviously that can happen in our level and levels below, because it's a development league. Obviously you have to cater to your audience and your players. At the next level, that might not work, but we might only have these guys for a few years. So I only have a limited amount of time where I have to develop these guys. And I think that if you can really use every possible scenario to your advantage, you are going to get the best out of your players, and you're going to get the most out of them, because you're using all your time properly and precisely.
That's transformative for a lot of coaches, especially in the minor hockey system, right? That, obviously at the younger ages, you might have parent coaches and, they're on the bench, for their kids or whatever the case may be. But the way that you would communicate to a player is something that we all could learn from, because, I think we all have to be teachers as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to say, hey, that, like you said, that play over there, like what could you have done better? And sometimes that's all it takes. You don't need to scream at them, throw whiteboards at them.
No. There's a time and place for everything, and I think, in my experiences, and I think the staff collectively, JR is the head coach, and he's done a great job at just kind of letting me do my thing in terms of, and he'll know when to step in if he has to. And I think having that relationship is so crucial, having your head coach allow you to do certain things, and it works out. And there's other times where it's like, hey, you have to do this. Yep, no problem. And having that ability to work collaboratively, I think, is the reason why we've had success moving players on to the next level, not just while I've been here, prior. So something's working. So, you look back at prior to my time, like Thomas Harley now has really stepped up for the Dallas Stars. Like Nick Hague has won a cup with Vegas a few years ago, and it's like you're having these really, really great defensemen coming out of your program, and there's a reason why. And I think that is such a crucial element for me as a coach, but also as someone that's striving to get to the next level as well. It's having somebody support you to do what you need to do to help other players get to where they need to be. I think that's such a crucial thing.
Yeah, and obviously when you're working with these players, they make mistakes all the time on the ice, right?
Yep.
So when they kind of beat themselves up, how do you kind of step into those types of scenarios?
One, first and foremost, you have to know your players. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to know who they are as a person and how they're going to react to certain things. I know those most of our players better than they know themselves, and that takes a lot of time and just kind of awareness. And again, going back to the classroom aspect, for me, it's like if you can manage 30 kids into a classroom and make them do something that they don't want to do, let's face it, most people don't want to be in school. So it's like, okay, what happens when you have 6 or 7 players and they are doing what they love to do? So now you already have a step up. So now you don't have to worry about that. Now you're finding little things and intricacies of who they are as people. So when things don't go the way as planned, you know how to step in, whether that might be a stern talking, that might be leaving them completely alone. I have a player of mine that he gets so mentally, what's the word? He just gets so wound up about mistakes, and he's a perfectionist, which I love, but it's unrealistic. And sometimes it's leaving that player alone, letting him cool down, and then having that conversation. Hey, you all good? Yeah. You know what you did wrong? Yes, I know. Okay. Then go do your thing. And other times it's like calming a player down. I think that's another thing, is like compounding problems or compounding mistakes. A guy let's say he'll fan on a puck, and then the puck will come back to him and he's already rattled about the last play, and now he's like throwing it up the wall. Well, now it goes to that player, and then there's a shot on goal. Then his player beats him to the net, and then he's falling down, and it's just a disaster. And sometimes having him sit down for any other reason than just to let him calm down, to get him back to where he can be an effective player for us, is another element. And benching, I don't use it as a benching punishment. Sometimes it's a benching tool. Sometimes you need that. And again, it goes back to that knowing your players, and then just on his shoulder in his ear, just saying, hey, you ready to go? This team needs you. We need you. Like, you bring something that we need. Can you do it? Yeah, I can do it. Boom, go back out there. And then all of a sudden, you don't have these constant drop-offs and then all of a sudden now they're stuck in a rut, and then it's tough to get them out of it. It's just quick down, let's get you back up. And it's a confidence thing, especially at 16 through 20 is a funny year. And I think, these guys are going through a lot of things other than just the pressures of playing hockey. They have external things and external motivators, whether it be, relationships, things at home, schoolwork, whatever it is. They have other things in their mind, and it's really getting them to understand that, but also get them in a good headspace to be a confident hockey player. And I think there's always a time for where you have to sit a guy down for punishment or have a talking to. Trust me, we have those discussions as well. But it's going back to, they know why. They know that you have their best interest at hand. And I think that goes far beyond anything else. And I think going back as a player, I had some coaches that never really gave me the why. And I was always like, well, why are you doing this? Like, and it's easy for players, especially at the young, like now I'm a mature adult, but when you're at that age, it's easy. Does he hate me? Does he not like me? Am I not very good? And that can spiral. And all of a sudden now you're thinking about those things, and you're not thinking about playing hockey in your shift that you have to be out for. So it's getting them in a good headspace is crucial.
And those are all like incredible points, because I find as you get higher in hockey, they become a lot more of that perfectionist mentality, and it's
Yep.
almost like a type A, OCD, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to crack that because they're completely shut down, and it almost looks like they don't want to talk to anybody. But sometimes you just kind of need to almost be like a little bit of a motivational speaker type of a mentality to say, hey, are you good to go, right?
It's
And
knowing your players. Yep, knowing your players.
yeah, that is so important. Let's talk a little bit about the outside factors and distractions. How do you keep your guys focused from all this noise that's happening on social media, or like everything that's out there?
It's interesting because, as an assistant coach, you have the luxury of, you're kind of mediator between the head coach and the players, and you have a different relationship with the players, and I think for me it's just, you're steering them in the right direction. I think oftentimes we want to just be coaches, but they also need like they need somebody to mentor them too, and guide them to be adults, because they are young adults. And when they're in the locker room, or outside the rink, or even walking around, it's like, hey, make sure you're doing this, or you're having these conversations of just like, you really want to try to get them to the next level, not just on the ice but off the ice, and being professional and having those conversations. And the external factors, we had a player that got a few years ago in his first relationship outside of, he had a girlfriend for the first time, and managing time. He was leaving the rink early to go hang out, and that's cool, but you got to put the work in. Like, and they have to go through those experiences too. Like, I'm not a parent yet, but oftentimes I keep thinking, I think this is what parenting is like. I think this is what it is. And it's like, hey, make sure you're doing this. And those external things are going to happen, and they're going to happen. They have to go through it, but it's being there for a reminder of, hey, like, you got to put the time in, you got to put the work in. And, sometimes they're going through rough things, and guys are living away from home for the first time, and being somewhat there for them to get through those things, and understanding those hurdles that they might be going through, and having those conversations. And it's open door policy. They can come in and talk whenever they want, and they know that, and they feel confident and in that. And I think that goes back to the relationship aspect that not just myself, but Stefan and JR have, is having those conversations outside of just the hockey element of it. And that goes a long way. And another thing for us is we do a lot of team meals. They do culinary class. So when they're out of high school, we put them in culinary class to teach them how to do basic things, and into cooking, and understanding knife skills and basic things on how to cook and fend for themselves. They're not making any gourmet meals that they can go and be a 5-star Michelin restaurant chef, but they're just getting those elements. And again, it's teaching them how to be an adult. I think that's such a crucial piece of what we do with the Steelheads, but also coaches. Like, I think you're coaching, but you're also mentoring.
Yeah, I call that future proofing for life, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just getting them ready for life in general, because at some point everybody's career comes to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know. You could be the best player and one career-ending injury, and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being prepared for that, I think, is very, very important. And the fact that you guys are doing that as an organization, really speaks, volumes in terms of getting them ready for everything else. And it's interesting because I like I said, with Stevie, I've known him since he was shorter than me, right? At one point, he was shorter than me.
Yeah.
But then I see him now, and I'm like looking up at him like this, and same with Connor too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but wait a minute, they're only like 19, 20 years old.
And we
And
forget that sometimes.
so fast I forget, right? But I think that that's important, and I think that's why people like yourselves are successful, because you are part of their life, right? You're not
Mhm.
just a coach. You're almost like a guardian, trainer, keeper.
Yeah, you wear a lot of hats, and I think that goes across the board because you're with them all the time. Like, you have that ability. It's not like minor hockey where they come to the rink afterwards, and you're with them. For us specifically, like, they're there. It's a long day. They're there quite a while, so you get to work with these guys and on and off the ice, and get to know who they are. And you have to have that awareness of that element to it, and that what you say to them might be a lasting imprint to them, but you might think, as a coach, yeah, I just said that on a random Tuesday, but they might take that because I know it's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you, where someone has said something to you, and you're like, wow, and you can still it still sticks in your brain, even at the age that we are. And we oftentimes overlook that what you say has a lasting imprint on these kids and in these players, and you have to cultivate them in a positive way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people don't forget the way that you made them feel, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's a huge testament, because if you say that one thing that maybe you blurted it out without even thinking about it, you could either hurt them long term or you can build them. And I always try to side on helping them build. So I'm always thinking about every word that I say and anytime that
Yes.
they're working with us.
It's funny because, in just a point to what you said, is like, when growing up, my dad was very cognizant on like putting me with the right coach. He wasn't like standings watching. He went to like, okay, this guy's a good coach, and this guy, to the point where like he was adamant when I was going into junior hockey, he wanted me to play for Dale Howardchuk back in Orangeville before he went to Barrie. And he was adamant because he wanted me to be surrounded by good quality hockey people. And one thing that really stuck out was, over the course of time, you tend to remember those people that have helped you in a positive way, but you can quickly recall the people that maybe had a negative impact, or maybe just did a negative thing. And oftentimes, if I'm not sure, I think about some of those things as a coach and saying, what did that person do, and how did I like that? And I obviously say, I just do the opposite of what that person did that made me feel that way. It's a funny thing, but to the point where I remember walking in a corridor, and it was my coach and myself, and we walked by each other. Not a word was said. I still remember the day it happened. I still remember how I felt about that, because it feels like you're just another person, another body, and you're not a person first and foremost. And I'm not his player, and I think that still sticks with me. And going back to what we were talking about, it's just like those lasting points. It's like always making sure that you're communicating to your players and they feel like they're somebody.
Yeah. Like I think where you got that, I mean, obviously that one example made you think about how you don't want to be.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I use those all the time. I
Yeah.
always go back on my experiences and say, how did that make me feel? How do I not want to be that?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because to this day, there are coaches in minor hockey that will coach the way they were coached, 20 years ago.
Flip it. Coach how you want to be coached. That's all it is. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
having that a mindset, because it's easy to fall back on the tendencies that you were taught, right? But it's hard to have to critically think of things that, hey, I didn't like that, or I liked this, and then kind of fine tuning what you liked and what you didn't like. And all of a sudden, that's your coaching philosophy. That's your identity as a coach and as a person, on what you want those players to be. And I said this jokingly to someone. I was like, if you're frantic, the players are going to be frantic. If you're stoic, they're going to be stoic. And they often resemble the players often resemble who the coach is behind them. So if you're yelling and screaming, they're going to yell and scream, and they're going to be undisciplined, and they're going to be highs and lows of the season. They won't be able to be consistent because you're not being consistent. And it goes hand in hand. And it's just having that ability to say, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, this is how I want to be as a coach, and fine tuning those. And that's your identity as a coach, because everyone has different ways that they've learned, and that's what makes every coach different. It's fine tuning those experiences and then making it fit to what you want your team to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, like you said, it's a monkey see, monkey do, right? So yeah, so I think what you're really doing is setting an example for everybody else in terms of how they want to be treated. And I think back even when I grew up, like I had one particular coach, and most of the coaches in the city would probably know who he is, but I used to have a coach that would shoot pucks at me like clappers, and if I did a drill wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to tell me, get off the ice, you're born by mistake, or like all
Wow.
sorts of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So most coaches know who I'm talking about, but he's long since passed away. But back then it was kind of accepted, right? That
Yeah.
that it would toughen up your skin and you're prepared for anything. But then when I started coaching, obviously, you don't shoot pucks at kids now, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I had the extreme experience where it was like, that's a coach that, there's certain good things about, him,
Yep.
but
Yep.
there's a lot of things that you just don't want to do. And I think that's what you're describing. So I think, and I think what you're describing also is that you have a very strong sense of empathy for the
Yes.
player to
Yeah.
put yourself in their shoes and understand what they're going through first before you start, giving all the answers. And obviously early on you said you don't even give them the answer. You ask them through questions, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think what you've learned from, Niagara and through your education background, I think is very key skill that you've grown. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And and I'm continuing to grow. I'm very much the believer of I don't know everything, and that's okay. And it's continuing to go to conferences and coming on, talking with you and talking with other people and having these discussions of continuing to acquire knowledge. And you can't have a fixed mindset. You have to have a growth mindset, especially in such an evolving sport like hockey, where you have to continue to evolve as a person, as a coach, to really get to know the players that are coming up, but also the game that continues to evolve. And I think that's such a crucial element. And using your resources, like yourself, like other people, like friends of family of mine that are in the NHL currently. In the summer, I was at a good friend of ours, this place, and he was going on and on about certain things and what he liked and didn't like. And we were there till legit 6 a.m, like the whole night, talking about hockey and talking about his experiences and things that he liked and didn't like. And this is how this team ran this, and this is how they approach that, and getting a sense of how it is at the highest level that you want to be at, hopefully, but also where your players are going to eventually go to and striving to get to. So it's a little bit of understanding of like, you don't know everything, and that's okay. Because I think oftentimes when you're in a leadership role, you want to be perceived like you know everything, but you don't, and that's okay. And it's continuing to know that and understand that. Like, players will come up and say, "Hey, Matt, do you know this, or have a question?" I might not have a clue. You know what? I don't know that. That's a great question. Let me get back to you. And then follow it up the next day and go do your due diligence, ask around, use your resources, and then get them the answer. Because then they're also saying there's a human element to that, not knowing everything. And now they can relate better to you.
Yeah, I mean that's a true, leader in any organization. Doesn't even have to be a hockey thing. I see that in the
Mm-hmm.
corporate aspect of it all the time, where, if there's a question that I didn't know, and I used to lead a sales team before, and like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
let me go find out. Right. And it doesn't show weakness. It actually shows
No,
strength.
100%. Yeah, you're bang on. And what we do, again, it's a sport, but it's corporate. It's every day. It's the same thing. It's just a different element. And for me, like I said earlier, like hockey and the being in the rink is just my classroom. That's all it is. It's just a different environment, but it's the same concepts and the same thing. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there.
So let me ask you my final question. So
Yep.
obviously, like, you've kind of come almost full circle, right? And from your playing days to now coaching and being that leader, and obviously you've got a really strong sense of that empathy and helping the players grow. Did you know this while you were playing back then? At what point did it kind of click for you?
You know what's funny is that so growing up, I'm not a dumb person, but I have grades that would think otherwise. And what I mean by that is I didn't go to class and I didn't put an effort into high school specifically. So I thought, a young kid thought he was gonna just really good at athletics. I'm just gonna go and, continue to move on just through my talent. And it didn't work. And a lot of schools for me growing up when I was getting recruited, and were like, academically, you can't get in. And I was a good player, but I was not an exceptional player where they're going to really use a favor to get me in the door. I was very expendable in the sense that, yeah, we'd like to have them, but there's others out there. And you get humbled quick, and you have to. And I think I had a good sense of who I was as a person as I moved up on the hard work and continuing to strive. I wasn't drafted. I had to work my way up and played tier 2 and, continue to grow and develop. And then over those bad times, not bad times, but adversity, it hardened you and made you realize. And it's come full circle to the point where I was not a good student to now going to get 2 degrees, being the academic advisor for the Steelheads, amongst other things, but being very, very into teaching. And it's like, I could never see myself at 16 saying that I would be a teacher, but I think through those experiences have made me aware of who I am and what makes me tick. And I think above and beyond anything else is that I love seeing players succeed. When they get drafted, they sign, like like I have a moment where I'm like, wow, that's what it's all about. And
Yeah.
when you have a little bit of selflessness and you know how much hard work you put into it growing up, it's easy to be like, you know what, yeah, I'm in the right spot. I'm doing what I love to do, and I think that's where it's kind of come full circle for me.
Yeah, it's addicting, right? When you see someone succeed.
It's the best. It's the best. And again, like I can't wait to have be a parent and have a kid or multiple kids someday, and I can have that experience with them as well. But it is so addicting, and I think when they see you fired up for them, they are like that. That's the ultimate thing, right? It's a gift that keeps on giving, right? Like it's just like continue. It just continues to grow, and I think those relationships are special to me, and they're special to them, and we can always share those, and nobody can ever take those things away.
No, exactly it. Awesome, man. Well, I know we could probably talk for hours about all this stuff
Yeah.
because I think this is like we're going down such a good area right now. But I'm gonna definitely bring you back because
Yeah, whenever you want. Yeah. I'd
yeah,
love to have you. Love to be a part of it. And like I said, I think you're doing some great stuff. I think getting this out there and the knowledge that you have going through yourself, going through it, your son going through it, and then coupled that with other people now reaching out to you and having questions. I think any platform is good if you have good content, and you have great content. So keep it up. Good job.
yeah, appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Awesome. Well, Maddie, thank you so much for coming on again. This has been fantastic. We'll definitely have you on very, very soon, even through maybe over the summertime. But yeah, so this concludes the episode with Maddie here, and we'll definitely be posting this very, very soon onto our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Tell all your friends about it. And thanks again for joining the Cognition School Podcast. And we will talk to you very, very soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.